For our January series, in January we take a look at some of our community partners. And so today we begin with resilience. The mission statement of resilience. Resilience mission is to respond to, reduce, and prevent domestic and sexual violence in Ottawa and Allegan counties. Today, we want to welcome Danielle Evans. Some of you knew we advertised that Lesley Coghill will be here, but Lesley's ill. And so we're very glad that Danielle is able to come today and fill in for her. Danielle is the Director of Advancement at Resilience, and so we're really happy that you could be here today. Thank you.
All right, I've got my microphone on here. Everyone can hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. As she mentioned, my name is Danielle Evans. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Advancement for Resilience. I started with Resilience a little over 10 years ago, started as an advocate, pretty fresh out of college, and I was working directly with survivors, helping them walk through some of these things that we'll talk about today. And then I moved into our fundraising in 2018, and I started serving as director in 2024. So really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for, I know you guys recently did a collection for us. We had some donations dropped off from Hope Church the other day, so thank you for all the ways that you all at Hope Church support us. I'm excited to tell you more about what we do and answer any questions that you might have. So Resilience has served our community for 48 years, going on 49 years. We were founded in 1977 as the Center for Women in Transition. We were founded by the JC Women of Grand Haven, a group of really great women who saw a need in their community and really just wanted to do something about it. So we started basically just as a helpline run totally by volunteers. And one thing that we like to mention is there was such a need in that community at that time that we actually started receiving calls to our helpline before that number was even publicized. So we have really seen a need for support very consistently since 1977. Some of you who may be familiar with our organization, I see Jane here. Jane has been very involved with our organization for a long time. You may remember our former name, which was Center for Women in Transition. So I want to tell you a little bit more about why that name was changed, where we came from, where we were going. So in 2018, we were seeing an increase in people who maybe don't identify as women reaching out for support. It didn't really feel like it was very welcoming for someone who doesn't identify as a woman to come to us for support when women is right there in our name. They might wonder, am I even welcome there? Will they even help me? And we didn't like that people were wondering if we would be willing to help them or not. So we wanted to create a name and a brand that better represented the diverse community that we served. We know that domestic and sexual violence are typically gender-based violence. It's typically women who are victimized by it, but that doesn't mean that people of other identities can't be victimized as well. And everybody deserves to have support and feel welcome reaching out for help. So we wanted to create a name that represented what every person that walks through our doors encompasses, whether that's the survivors seeking support, whether that's our team that hears some really horrible things day in and day out, the volunteers that help us make our programs and services happen. And that's kind of how we landed on the name Resilience. Our mission did not change. The work that we do did not change. Our mission is to respond to, reduce, and prevent domestic and sexual violence in Ottawa and Allegan counties. We work to achieve this mission through education, through collaboration with other programs and community organizations, and with advocacy, providing services and support to local victims of domestic and sexual violence. Every single day, we see people from all walks of life. We see younger people, we see people who maybe have a little bit more experience, we see every gender, we see every race. Domestic violence is not discriminatory. It can affect anyone. It can affect anyone in this room even. So we make sure that everyone that comes to our building for support feels welcome and safe and supported. We provide services in English and Spanish. We have some Spanish bilingual staff And we also have the ability to provide services. We have translation services. We can provide translation in any language as needed, including sign language as well. These are our organizational values. We're very committed to our organizational values, and we spend a lot of time every year reviewing them, make sure they still feel like the right fit for our organization and where we're going and where we've been. So we value the right to every individual to a safe and just environment. We value community accountability and recognition to eliminate the root causes of violence. We value the inherent quality and worth of all individuals. We value the strength and power of individuals to make their own life choices. We value the integrity of our organizational practices, and we value responding to community need with vision, creativity, and courageous leadership. So in 2025, those values were really put to the test. I don't think it's any secret that we have a changing political landscape, and that has certainly been affecting the work that we do and the funding we received. So this last year, we had to demonstrate our commitment to those values when our board of directors had to make the difficult decision to turn down some federal funding that we've relied on for more than 3 decades. If I'm being honest, we've relied on that funding for longer than I've been alive. Which is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. So it's funding that we typically would receive from HUD, which is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They were funds for our supportive housing program, so they were rental assistance money. And the reason that we did that is because the language in the contract that we had to follow suddenly changed. And the new contract language would have required that we do not serve undocumented survivors. It required that it undermined services to LGBTQ+ survivors, and it required adherence to any and all current or future executive orders, amongst other expectations. So it was pretty concerning for us. We had an emergency board meeting about it. We spent a lot of time looking at it from every different angle. What does it mean if we take these funds? What is the risk that we're putting ourselves at? Does that align with our values? The answer is no. And so we made the decision, our board made the decision to decline that grant award. To the best of my knowledge, I believe it's the first time that we've had to decline federal funding that we worked really hard to apply for. We aren't going to compromise our values or fail our duty to serve all survivors with the confidentiality and the trauma-informed care that every survivor in our community deserves. Thank you. Thank you. This is a look at what our service approach is. So we have 3 focus areas that we have for our service areas. Everything we do is empowerment-based, survivor-centered, and trauma-informed. So what that means is that every survivor is empowered to make their own decisions. We believe that every person that walks into our building knows what's best for them. They're the expert in their own lives. They know what's going on way more than we do. We're there to be a sounding board, to provide resources, to show them options, and for ultimately them to make the decision. So if someone comes and tells us that maybe now is not a safe time to leave their abusive situation, we believe them. We know that when someone decides to leave or when somebody leaves an abusive relationship, that is when they're at the highest risk of harm or homicide, and that's not something we take lightly. Abuse is all about power and control. One person is trying to maintain power and control over another person, and when it's perceived that they're losing that control, the abuser is going to go to much greater lengths to try to keep that power over that person. So a lot of times when we're hearing about domestic violence in the news, when things happen, things like attacks or homicides, you often hear it paired with things like, she had just left him, or she was just granted a personal protection order against him. So a big part of what we do is safety planning and working with people to, maybe now's not the right time to leave, but what are the steps that we can take to make sure that you and your kids are going to be safe until it is? What are some emergency plans that we can make if things get out of hand? Who can you call? What are some secret signals that you can have with maybe some neighbors or family? We accept donations of cell phones that people don't use anymore, and we clear them we refer to them as 911 phones, but then we can, as a part of safety planning, we can give those to people. And even if the phone isn't in service, it can still be used to contact 911. So a lot of times, part of the keeping control over someone is they'll take their phone or they'll break their phone so that they can't call for help. So, you know, if they have a couple of phones hidden in other places that their abuser doesn't know about, that's an added element of safety that we can provide. I've got my notes here, but I'm going rogue, so I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. We work with survivors to come up with a plan that keeps them safe, minimizes risk of further harm. We walk alongside survivors through every single step, from the first call that they make or the first time that they walk into our building to maybe years down the road. Maybe they are years away from the situation, or maybe even 20 years ago they went through a situation all on their own and they didn't get support. And now some things are coming back up and they're feeling, you know, triggered or re-traumatized. We have programs that can still help years later, help address those trauma symptoms. Our staff are highly trained to understand the impacts of trauma and to support survivors in their journey to healing and safety. Last year, we produced a new agency video that showcases the work that we do. It showcases our team, a couple of our team members that I'm really excited to show you. They're doing the hard work day in and day out. And so this video talks a little bit about what they do and what it means for them to be able to do it. It doesn't encompass all of our programs. I want to give you that ahead of time, but it does talk about our sexual assault nurse exam program, our supportive housing program, and our advocacy services. So I want to just take a couple minutes to watch that video together before we move on. Yes. Move the podium? Yeah. Yes, I sure can. Thank you. Is that good? Okay. Is it ready? You tell me when. Yes, go. All right, here we go.
So resilience is the idea that things can get bent and pulled out of shape and then go back to that shape. It's rebounding. It's coming back to where you were.
Resilience to me means continuing to choose to make movement forward even when you have external factors trying to push or hold you back.
A safe haven, a place where you can really just be yourself, come as you are, a place to be vulnerable.
Resilience means a safe space for survivors of domestic or sexual violence, or is thinking about their options.
Sexual violence happens far more often than we might even think. It's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4, I believe, men. This is one of the most underreported crimes. At Resilience, what we care most about is prioritizing someone's health and safety. So a sexual assault nurse exam, or a SANE as we call it to shorten it, is a head-to-toe physical exam. We'll see anyone ages 13 and up within 5 to 10 days of them having experienced a sexual assault or some kind of sexual violence. We have the option, if the survivor that comes and sees us would like us to collect DNA evidence. I genuinely think it's an honor to get to sit with someone at one of their worst moments. Having a support network has made all the difference for my ability to thrive and flourish. I am really grateful to be able to be that for someone.
The type of housing support that Resilience provide is a 2-year rental assistance program where we work alongside survivors to assist them in rebuilding their lives. But that also could look like an emergency shelter program, and that helps survivors to create like a little soft place for them to land throughout a very traumatic experience. When a survivor enters our supportive housing program, they could literally be coming from homelessness, and so we work with survivors to get the essentials that they need. That could be clothing, that could be baby formula, a lot of houseware items. We really help survivors be able to walk towards that independence by allowing them to be able to learn what works best for them, making decisions decisions that might be more beneficial to their future and helping them really to cultivate a very safe future for their families.
Las barreras que enfrentan los sobrevivientes que son bilingües son que quizás no tengan un sistema de apoyo entre sus amigos o familiares, barreras de idioma y de saber sus recursos locales. Lo que cambia es que el sobreviviente se siente más bienvenido y es más fácil expresar posiblemente algunas de las emociones que son difíciles de expresar en un idioma que no es su idioma principal. I've been here for 4 years as a survivor advocate, and it still has those glimmers of hope. That's the fantastic part of working in an organization that helps survivors of domestic or sexual violence.
I decided to become an advocate. I wanted to be able to support people the way that I was supported. I really think that working with Resilience saved my life. When I was first connected with Resilience, it's really isolating to be in a situation of abuse. Working with Resilience, I came in and I was treated with respect and warmth and dignity. I was shown kindness, and that was something at the time that I just didn't have a lot of experience with. Something I would want survivors to know is that it's okay if it takes more than one time to leave. We respect and support people's choices, and we're here for people even if it takes more than one time, or even if there's more things that they learn.
One really cool, oh, thank you so much. One really cool thing about that video that I want to highlight, and maybe you caught it from context, but Katie, the survivor advocate that spoke last there, she was actually someone who benefited from our services. That was how we first met her. I actually met her when I was an advocate and worked with her as her advocate, and she went through some really tough stuff, and then she came out the other side and is doing amazing, and decided that she wanted to work for us and help other survivors. She's now one of our advocates, which I think is a really cool thing as well. We have a couple staff members who are people that have benefited from our services before, and they're so passionate about the support that they received that they work for us now and provide that help for other people too. So I think that's just a really special thing. Our mission has 3 focus areas. We respond to, reduce, and prevent domestic and sexual violence. So I'll talk through some of the ways that we do those things. Our programs are really built around those 3 focus areas. So we respond to domestic violence through things like our 24-hour helpline. So we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't take holidays off. We are available to provide support, assess for shelter if that's something people need, answer any questions that people might have. And we have both an English and a Spanish helpline that's available 24/7. We do walk-in advocacy. So during business hours at our program office on Butternut Drive, we have advocates available during all business hours. Anyone can just stop in. You don't have to have an appointment and talk to an advocate. Whether you just want to get some education, talk through what's going on. We do a lot of helping people apply for personal protection orders. It's a pretty daunting application, and the judges are looking for very specific information, and when you're overwhelmed with a million things going on, that can be really hard to fill out on your own. So we can do that, and then that's where we can do things like provide those 911 phones, do some safety planning, talk about options. It's not just survivors that we see on a walk-in basis. Sometimes it's people coming in wanting to talk through how to help someone that they know that maybe isn't ready to take that step to calling us or coming into our office. Maybe they just want to know, what can I say to them? How can I support them through what they're going through when maybe they're not ready to make that next step yet? We have an emergency shelter. I think throughout the community, that's probably what we're most widely known for, is our emergency shelter. So it's at a confidential location. It's not at our program office. It's not labeled. You won't find any signage that it is a shelter, and that's obviously for the safety and the confidentiality of the people that are staying there. The shelter that we have is specifically for families that are fleeing abusive homes and are not going to be safe in other places. They are people who their partners or ex-partners are actively looking for them and are actively wanting to harm them. So it's a pretty high security shelter, staffed 24/7, and we're able to help them with things like basic needs. Maybe they fled with nothing and they don't have like clothes or basic need items. We can provide all of that. We provide basic food, any basic food, so they don't have to provide their own, but then everybody gets their own like locker space so they can bring whatever they want. And everything is really, like I mentioned, empowerment based. We don't have necessarily like the curfews or things like that that we might see at other organizations. And that's because I keep going back to the empowerment based, but when you're in a situation where someone is trying to keep control over you, your choice really gets taken away at every single turn. And so a big part of what we're doing is trying to bring choice back into the survivors' lives in as many ways that we can possibly do that. We also work with the folks that are staying in our shelter while they're there to work on finding more stable, secure, long-term housing. So helping them apply for housing, paying rental applications, getting connected with programs like the housing choice vouchers and things like that as well. As the video mentioned, we have a sexual assault forensic nurse examiners program. I think maybe folks don't know that exists quite so much. So we actually have a medical facility right on site at our program office on Butternut Drive. So it just looks kind of like an OBGYN's office, but it's a private space where we can meet with sexual assault survivors, do a physical exam, collect evidence if that's something that the survivor wants, and report to law enforcement if that's something that they want. They are not required to report to law enforcement by coming to us. That's a big difference between coming to us and like going to an ER. First of all, if you go to an ER after a sexual assault, while it's horrific and a really traumatic experience, it isn't usually considered a medical emergency. So you might have to wait longer than someone who is maybe in a car crash and needs immediate medical assistance. And then also hospitals are required to report crime. So, and a lot of people don't know that. So someone might want to go to the hospital because they just want to get checked over and they don't know if they want to report it to law enforcement yet. There's a lot of reasons why someone might not want to report to law enforcement, including maybe it was the person they're married to that sexually assaulted them. So by coming to us, we can do the steps of making sure that they're physically okay. We can collect evidence and hold on to it for later. They don't have to decide in the moment if they want to report to law enforcement. So we can get that immediate medical care out of the way, make sure they're supported, make sure they're okay mentally and physically, get them connected with some long-term support, and then give them some time to process what happened, decide how they want to move forward, and again, we walk along each step with them. We do, when it is reported to law enforcement, our nurses do testify in court. So we did recently have a case where we had a teenager that came to us that was sexually assaulted by a serial offender. And because of our nurse's testimony, the prosecutor actually called us and told us that the jury watched our nurse's testimony several times, and it was because of her testimony that this person was put away for 25 years. So it's a really important program. I'm really trying to get the word out more that it exists and what help we can provide. And then, of course, we can provide long-term support like therapy and long-term advocacy and support groups as well. We provide legal advocacy. While we don't have an attorney on staff, we don't have we don't provide legal advice. What we can do is, we can help people understand court processes, understand the rights that they have as a victim, and again, help walk them through processes like custody or divorce. We work to reduce domestic and sexual violence through things like our Survivor Advisory Council. Our Survivor Advisory Council is an opportunity for domestic or sexual violence survivors to provide ongoing input into our organization's programs, services, strategies, and community engagement efforts. Our council has been focusing the recent efforts on public policy advocacy and educating elected officials about issues and barriers that survivors often face. We have both survivors that have used our services in the past and those who did not as a part of our council. We provide support groups. We shape our support groups and our educational workshops around what survivors in our community have identified as a need. We've done therapy groups that engage animals as a tool for healing. We've done coping in the holidays when things might look different, navigating the legal system, survivor-centered yoga, and so much more. So we really, we offer a ton of different, we have even like a self-care one coming up in February as well. So we have a lot of different support groups that we offer throughout the year. We have trauma therapy. So our trauma therapy program provides support for both survivors of violence and for children ages over the age of 3 that have been exposed to domestic violence. Children can be really affected by domestic violence even if they're not the ones being abused directly. Even if they're not seeing the violence that happens, children are a lot more aware of things than we even realize. And so we work with kids to talk about what's happened, increase feelings of safety, process trauma, identify coping mechanisms, and things like that. And like all of our services, our therapy is completely free, and we don't bill insurance. We don't even ask for any insurance information or anything like that. We also have a supportive housing program, which was mentioned a little bit in that video. So our supportive housing program is our more long-term housing assistance program. So that is a 2-year rental assistance. We work with them to help find housing, so we don't provide the housing. We don't have like a physical space that we put folks in. So they're putting the housing in their own name. It's not like it's under our name. You know, they're the ones getting their credit built for it. We're just providing that rental assistance. And that can be really helpful because a lot of times there have been things like financial abuse that have existed in their relationship. And so that could look like maybe throughout the relationship their partner said, well, no, you need to be, for example, a stay-at-home mom and you can't work and I'm going to be the breadwinner. So they don't have a work history, so they're not able to just go out and get a job. Maybe their partner intentionally destroyed their credit. We see that a lot, and so it can be really hard to get housing, and that's another means to try to control them. If I destroy your credit, you're going to have to rely on me to have housing, or you're going to be homeless and on the streets. So when people are in that program, it really gives them sort of 2 years of financial relief, and they can work to rebuild their lives, rebuild their credit, maybe go back to school or decide what they want to do next. And it creates some stability while they're rebuilding their lives. We also believe that the first step to preventing abuse, to stopping abuse, is by preventing it altogether. So we do a lot of really great work to respond to domestic violence, but we are also working to hopefully end it in our community altogether. So we have a few different prevention programs that I'll talk about. The first one being our Champions of Healthy Manhood program. So we started this probably around, I might have the year wrong, but I think 2017-ish. And that supports the development of men and boys as role models in violence prevention. We're really working to get more men involved in this work and to work with young boys to maybe challenge some of that traditional masculinity that has been so engraved in our culture for so long, challenging some of those thoughts and feelings and getting them involved that way. And then we do a lot of community education and outreach through things like this. We're working to educate our community on the dynamics of domestic and sexual violence and the danger it creates, not only for the people that are in the situation, but for our broader community as a whole. There certainly are instances, especially like workplace violence. You know, it can show up in a workplace and you can have nothing to do with the situation and you could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time and get caught in the middle of something that could be potentially dangerous. So it's something that we all should care about, whether or not we feel like it's involved in our lives directly or someone we know. I would dare to say that everyone in this room is more connected to domestic violence than we may even realize. I want to highlight a few successes that we've seen. You know, this is a lot of hard stuff that we're talking about. It can feel really dark, but I want to share some mission moments and some things that we've been celebrating as a team over the last few months. First of all, our holiday gift shop this past year was a huge success. Maybe some of you have been involved with it. We sort of had a traditional adopt-a-family program for many, many, many years. And then this year we decided to sort of re-envision that. And we wanted to bring choice back to the table. So it's going back to the empowerment model. So the adopt-a-family model was really great. We matched donors with the families using our services. We provided sort of a wish list of things that the family might like, and then the donor would purchase those items and give it to them. We shifted this year, and we made a holiday gift shop. Still 100% donor supported. Everything that we got was donation based, whether it was people buying the toys and stuff outright, or providing a financial donation for us to purchase like high need items. We would typically use the funds for things for teenagers. Teenagers are often the forgotten ones in holiday programs, and because they're harder to shop for sure. So how it worked is we set up our multi-purpose room in our program office with a big holiday gift shop, and survivors made appointments, and they came in and they shopped for gifts for their own children instead of us deciding what the kids should get. We don't know their kids, they know their kids. So they picked out the items themselves, and we saw a record number of people that we were able to help this year. So we were able to help 119 families this year, which was 168 adults, because some of the, sometimes there was like an 18-year-old in the home or things like that. And just about 300 kids that received gifts through our holiday gift shop this year. So since we've shifted from the adopt-a-family format, that's about twice as many families as we were able to serve with this program. So this card here is from someone that received gifts from our holiday gift shop. I just wanted to include that because it was a really nice card that she sent to us. We also have some really big and much needed repair projects in the work for our shelter. In 2025, we received funding from both Kentucky Fried Wishes, which yes, is KFC's charitable giving foundation, and also from the Holland Zealand Women Who Care to do some shelter security and fire alarm system upgrades that have been needed for a really long time. One significant change is that we are going to be installing fire alarms with flashing red lights, which are more inclusive for folks staying in our shelter who may be deaf or hard of hearing. Right now, it's just a really loud alarm, and if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you might not, you might not hear those go off. And additionally, we're also in the process, knock on wood, of getting final approval for a grant from MISTA, which is the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, for a slew of miscellaneous projects that we've needed at our shelter for a long time. So that's going to include things like replacing our shelter roof, which has not been replaced since 2002. So it's very much needed. And we're going to replace some windows. We have some windows that are a little bit drafty. We're going to be able to install a new HVAC system that will allow each resident to control the temperature in their room versus just having one set temperature for the entire building, and some other things that we've needed for a really long time. So if you'd like to pray for us, if you'd like to pray for our project, we'd ask that you pray that this project is fully funded, and that we can make all the repairs that we've needed, and also that our current roof in its current state stays intact as possible, and as we anxiously await for spring to get here so we can get that project off the ground, because it's great that we're getting the money for it, but we can't do it right now. So that's what we have going on at our shelter. Here's a story from our supportive housing program, a success that we've seen. As I mentioned, it provides personalized support for survivors that are unhoused due to domestic violence. Our supportive housing advocates provide support through home visits and educational programming. So once the applicant secures stable housing, we can offer temporary rental assistance in Ottawa or Allegan County, and it's having the safe and secure housing with financial assistance is a huge help to ending the cycle of abuse for people that are experiencing domestic violence. So this is a success story from our supportive housing program recently. We had a single mother and her child who fled a pretty abusive situation, a pretty scary situation. And they arrived at Resilience looking for safety, looking for stability, looking for a chance to rebuild their lives, and they enrolled in our supportive housing program. She was holding tight to her dream of earning a nursing degree. She wasn't able to go to school in the past for various reasons, and she wanted to create a better future for herself and her child. So she's now graduated from our supportive housing program. She has stable housing that she's able to afford on her own, and she was able to get that nursing degree, which was really cool. And that rental assistance that we were able to provide is what allowed her to be able to go back to school and focus on her school and her children and her future, while we took care of the financial aspect of rent. Another really cool program that we've seen a lot of success with recently is our equine assisted therapy program. So it's a therapy program that incorporates horses into therapy, which is really cool. So we have a partnership with Renew Therapeutic Riding Center. And we've partnered with Renew over the last couple years to offer both children's sessions and family sessions that include children and parents. And our trauma therapist, Tori, partners with the equine mental health specialist at Renew for these sessions. They learned coping skills and process trauma and incorporate the horses into that work. During our pilot program for children that have witnessed domestic violence, one child actually chose to write a letter to the horse that she worked with due to how much the horse had helped her process her trauma, which I think is a really sweet thing. And her therapist shared that she went from not really talking much, wearing a lot of black, not wanting to do much, to she now wears bright shirts. She often wears shirts like that have horses on them. And she is now filled with a lot of hope and a renewed sense of self, and she's just totally a different person than she was before she did this program. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to tell you more about that Champions of Healthy Manhood program. It works to support the development of men and boys as role models and leaders in violence prevention. So our youth program includes either 8 sessions or 24 sessions for young men ages 11 to 17 in schools and youth programs. So we're actually going into the schools, and like it's actually part of like their class curriculum, oftentimes like health classes and things like that. And it's not just we come one time and then that's it. Like we're working with them however long the school is able to let us be engaged with them. And then we're also working with programs like the Boys and Girls Club, where we're meeting with some young men in those programs and talking through some of these things as well. Our Faith and Masculinity workshop is a 3-week church workshop that invites men to explore masculinity through faith, love, and a deeper connection to their values. If anyone is interested in maybe hosting this at Hope Church, we of course would love to come. The man that does it, he's on paternity leave right now after he welcomed his second little girl, but he'll be back in February. And his name is Brad Hefia, and he's a really great guy, and you guys would really love connecting with him if that's something you're interested in doing here. We also have a college program called Catapult. So that works with college-age men to lead, build respectful relationships, and create safer, healthier campus cultures. Especially like, the first year or two that you're in college, that's when you're really developing who you are and what you're going to be and who you're connecting with. And so that's a really critical time to get men involved in things like healthy masculinity as well. All of these programs help promote healthy relationships in our community and work to ultimately prevent violence. So hundreds of men have gone through our youth program, hundreds of young boys. And here's one story that just one of, I'm sure, many. So there was a young man named Marcus who participated in our Healthy Manhood program. And when he joined it, he carried the weight of a really painful childhood. He grew up in foster care and faced years of abuse from his father. He often described feeling isolated, angry, unsure of how to process his emotions. And like so many young men, he'd been taught to keep his feelings hidden behind a mask. We don't talk about our feelings, the good old man up mentality. This mask left him feeling alone, in pain, disconnected from others. And most importantly, he was at risk of repeating the cycles of violence that he went through for so many years. He was at risk of perpetrating that violence against other people. And through our youth programming, he was able to learn that expressing emotion is not a weakness, but it's a pathway to healing. He began using his passion for music. He was really into music, and he began using that as a healthy outlet, writing some lyrics and transforming his anger into loneliness and loneliness into resilience and hope. And he even wrote, I don't have it here with me, but he wrote a whole song about his experience that is really powerful. And he's a teenage boy, you know? I think that's really powerful to see from a teenager. So stories like these are really heartwarming reminders of why we do this work and the impact that it's having in our community. But, you know, it's not all good. We have challenges as well. So we can celebrate these successes, but we also have to acknowledge the challenges that we're facing, particularly right now. I've been with the organization for 10 years, and if I'm being honest, this is the most challenging. The last year has been the most challenging year that I've seen in my time at the organization. Currently, our greatest need is to maintain our funding. We've seen a significant reduction in available state and federal funding in recent years. This year, the Michigan legislature passed the state budget that allocated $35 million for domestic and sexual violence programs. So that's for a statewide, all sorts of programs like ours, not just resilience. This funding helps domestic violence shelters, sexual assault programs, children's advocacy centers. Some prosecutors' offices have victim advocacy programs, and it funds those as well. So $35 million sounds like a lot and is wonderful, but the level of funding that we actually need to keep these programs fully funded in Michigan is $75 million. So it's a lot more than what we're getting. So we're advocating for the Michigan state budget to pass $75 million for crime victim organizations in 2027. If you're interested in legislative advocacy efforts, you can help us advocate for this. It's called the 75 Saves Lives campaign, and domestic violence agencies across the state are participating in that advocacy effort, encouraging your legislators to support funding for organizations like ours and for victim services, to make sure that survivors have access to these vital and life-changing services that organizations like Resilience provide across our state. We are just one of many organizations in Michigan that provide this kind of support. So looking ahead, there's a projected 38% decrease in the Victims of Crime Act funding for fiscal year 2027, which is going to create a $26 million funding gap. With everything that we've seen happening recently, we know that we have to shift how we've done our fundraising. We have to reduce our reliance on state and federal funding and shift inward towards our local community and focus more on local community engagement and local community fundraising. It costs over $3 million every year to operate Resilience. That doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of effort from our very small but mighty fundraising department to raise that money. And as we continue to see those state and federal fundings decline, that money has to come from somewhere. So we're going to really be focused on how can we get our local community more engaged in fundraising and supporting, because it is people that we know, it is community members, it is our friends and our family that need this support. One great way that you can support Resilience, obviously through financial donations or donations of in-kind goods. We accept like clothing and household goods. The only things we can't really take are like bigger things like furniture and appliances, simply because we just don't have a place to put them while we're waiting for someone to need them. But we have a client assistance fund. So that's a really flexible fund that is providing direct financial assistance for survivors, and it's flexible on purpose so that we can offer financial support in whatever way that someone might need it. So when barriers get addressed, survivors can focus on healing, on their family, on their self-care, on their future. So we can use the Client Assistance Fund to purchase items for survivors that are engaged in our programs, things like maybe they have someone actively, driving by their house or stopping at their house and trying to break in. So we can do things like purchase security cameras or change the locks. We can provide gas cards for them to get to and from important appointments or job interviews. Maybe they need some basic car repairs to be able to get to and from work. We can cover things like maybe they fled with nothing and they don't even have as much as their driver's license or their ID. And that's a critical first step to being able to get housing or get a job or anything like that. And so we can help them purchase those things if they need. We can provide basic needs like clothing or personal care items. We can help with moving expenses. Maybe they found a place to go, but they don't have any money for the security deposit or the first month's rent. Or maybe their kid's been sleeping on the floor or on an air mattress and they need a bed for their child. So our Client Assistance Fund is purposefully really flexible in providing assistance for any of those things that survivors might need to move forward. So we're certainly in need of replenishing that Client Assistance Fund. And at the end of this presentation, we'll have a QR code to our donate page if you feel called to contribute. Of course, we have a donation link on our website, and donations can be mailed or dropped off to our office on Butternut Drive as well. Looking ahead, we are fast approaching our 50th anniversary as an organization. So our 50th anniversary is going to be in 2027, and we're looking ahead with a lot of hope, with a lot of determination to make sure that we can keep providing the support that folks in our community need. And we're exploring a capital campaign for that 50-year anniversary that will help us improve our spaces and strengthen our service delivery to our community. What we envision for our community is an equitable and resilient community free of domestic and sexual violence, something that has to be a community-wide effort. We can't do it on our own. You know, we can do this work, help support survivors, but ultimately ending abuse is a community-wide effort. So with everyone in this room's help, we can work every day to make our community safer, to make a more resilient community, and we can work to end domestic and sexual violence altogether. We have a lot of opportunities to give, whether that's a financial gift or a gift of items, like I mentioned, like clothing or personal care items, or a gift of time. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. It can be more behind the scenes things, if that's your interest, like sorting donations and putting things together in our apparel and essentials closet, or it can be more hands-on support, like working on our helpline or providing advocacy during sexual assault exams. So we really try to shape volunteer opportunities around people's strengths and interests as well. We have a couple different opportunities coming up this spring that I'll mention, and all this information can also be found on our website. So on March 12th, we're going to be hosting a community open house at our program office on Butternut Drive from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So we'll have some light refreshments, but it's an opportunity for you to come meet some of our team members and talk to them firsthand, and tour our spaces. You know, you can see where the kids go for children's therapy. You know, as long as there's not a sexual assault exam happening at the time, you'll be able to tour our sexual assault medical room as well. And you can see the spaces that brave survivors are walking into every single day. And then on April 16th, we will have our Denim and Desserts fundraisers. So that's going to be we've had it at Boatworks the last few years, but we've had the wonderful problem of outgrowing the space. So we're at a new location this year. So we're going to be at Macatawa Legends this year on April 16th from 6 to 9 p.m. And it's a really fun night. You know, there's food and drinks and raffles and live auctions and our Heads or Tails game. So it's really fun, but then you also hear firsthand the impact of our support. And I'm really excited that our staff member who benefited from our services in the past is actually going to be sharing more about her story at the event too. So I think it's going to be a really powerful evening. Tickets are going to be on sale in February. And of course, all the funds raised at that fundraiser go toward, you know, providing support for survivors in our community. I also want to encourage everyone to reach out to me personally if you want a tour of our space or if you want to talk a bit deeper or more at length about the support that we do provide. So on the back table there, I have both brochures and I have my business cards. So you can feel free to reach out to me via email or by giving me a call. And I'd love a chance to show you around and talk to you a little bit more about the work and how you can get involved. So I want to, this is the donation link that I was talking about. Of course, we have the donation link on our website as well. But I want to thank you all again one more time for having me here today. It's been an honor to talk to all of you. You all seem like you really care a lot about this, and that means a lot to me. So thank you for caring, and thank you for supporting survivors in our community. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Just a question about when your survivors come in the door, and if they also have the struggle and challenge of having their own addictions or their own mental health issues, how you sort that advocacy out and get them triaged to the right kinds of help.
That's a really great point. So we work really closely with a lot of other community organizations. Community mental health is going to be one of them, and then we work with a lot of addiction recovery organizations as well. So part of the support process is not just what support can we find you specifically for abuse, but what support can we find you for these other avenues and concerns that you might have in your life. So we do work really closely with other organizations, and maybe they come to us, but maybe we need to address some mental health concerns before we can move forward. So maybe the first step is getting them connected with community mental health and getting things sorted out there before we continue with therapy or long-term advocacy. So yeah, we work really closely with other organizations as well. Yeah.
Me llamo David Alejandro. Soy hispanohablante. I wonder to what degree your operations in Spanish are a portion of your entire work. I appreciated seeing something in Holland, Michigan that operates in Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really important, particularly in this community where we see a lot of migrant workers. It's really important to be able to offer those services in Spanish. I don't have like this very specific data right in front of me to tell you exactly how much we serve, but if I had to guess, I would probably say 25 to 30% of how many of the folks that we support are Spanish speaking. Yeah.
I noted that one of your values was community responsibility, and along that line, I'm curious your relationship in both Allegan and Ottawa County with prosecutor's office. Usually, well, I assume that a lot of instances where people are engaged or police have been called in or other officials at an extremely dangerous moment in their lives. How do you fit into that, and how does that work?
That is a really, really good question. So we do work really closely with the prosecutor's office, especially, a lot of our prosecutor's offices locally have victim advocates, so we work with them. But sort of around COVID time, so the timing wasn't great, but we were working on something that we call a domestic violence high-risk team. And so that was something in partnership with the prosecutor's office, with victim advocates, with places like Child Protective Services, where when police are getting called out to houses over and over again for domestic violence calls, that should raise a red flag to law enforcement that something even worse might be happening down the road. And how can we work together to prevent that? So we did have, I don't think it's super active right now, but we're hoping to get it back off of the ground, domestic violence high-risk teams where we're working with law enforcement and other community agencies to identify some of these cases in our community that we're sort of deeming high risk. We have an assessment that we go through where we can sort of, based off of what has happened in the past, we can sort of, unfortunately, score the likelihood that this person is going to be killed by their partner. And if they score high enough, we need to get together with law enforcement and figure out how can we make sure that that doesn't happen.
I'm wondering what your definition of domestic violence is.
Yeah.
I suspect that it's broader than most people realize, and and people may not recognize that they actually are in a violent situation. And then secondly, given our political environment, has that emboldened more violence? Are you seeing more domestic violence?
Yes, okay. So let me make sure I answer both of those. So the definition of domestic violence, are we seeing more emboldened violence? So domestic violence can be a generally broad term. In general, domestic violence can mean any person that you live or have lived with. So in theory, that doesn't have to be a partner. That could be your parents, it could be your kids, it could be your brothers and sisters. So sometimes, like in the news, you'll hear domestic violence talked about, but it's not a partner. So our focus area, we're able to support any victims of domestic violence, but our focus area really is on intimate partner violence. So you'll hear organizations like ours use intimate partner violence a little bit more frequently than domestic violence. And so what that means usually is a partner or an ex-partner. And the reason that we're more focused on intimate partner violence than domestic violence in general is because typically domestic violence, when it's not a partner, there's not usually the element of, as often, not always, not often the element of power and control, and not usually as much of a risk of harm or homicide that exists when it comes to intimate partner violence. And then to answer the other part of your question, are we seeing people more emboldened? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. We are seeing more instances of violence. We're seeing people go to greater lengths to commit these violence, and we're seeing people justifying what they're doing because of the current landscape that we're living in a lot more as well.
I know that in the Hope Church women's bathrooms, on the back of the stalls, there's the folder, the notice for resilience. How do you determine where those, because I would imagine that if I were in a situation like that, I would need to see it again and again and again before I thought, all right, that may be someplace I can approach. So how do you determine where those go, and who does that, and how often are they replenished?
Yeah, good question, great question. We will put those posters anywhere that is willing to put up those posters. So sometimes, we're reaching out to places, or, sometimes we're reaching out to people saying, will you put these up? Sometimes it's people reaching out to us saying, can we have some more posters to put up? So I would encourage, if anyone knows of any place that would be willing to put one, to please contact me, and I'd be more than happy to get you some of those posters. We typically say the bathroom is a good place to put them because, when you're in a really controlling situation, usually the bathroom is one of the only places that you can go on your own. So anyone that would like posters on our information, but to the other point of what you said, it does take seeing that information many times. And it also, there's statistics on how many times it can take up to 7 times to finally leave for good. So we do see a lot of people reaching out for support, and then maybe we don't hear from them for a couple months, and then they reach out again, and it's making them feel welcome and making them know that regardless of if you talked to us and you said you were going to leave and you didn't, that's totally fine. We don't know your situation. We're here to support you, and we're here to provide help in any way that we can.
Can you tell us, what is your average age of your clients?
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of children? Do you have a lot of seniors? Or what is your kind of average age of your client?
That's a really good question. So I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but what I would say in general is the demographic that's most affected by domestic violence is typically like 18 to 24. So we see a lot of people in that, but we also see people really at all ages. So we had, just over the holiday program, looking at some of those demographics. I mean, we had some folks in their 70s as well who were reaching out for support, and especially, that generation. Maybe they can be from we don't talk about our problems, or you made a commitment, and so that's what you deal with. So I would say our main demographic is probably 18 to 24, but we do see all ages.
Unfortunately, thank you so much. This needs to be our last question so we can wrap up.
Our 3 oldest daughters all volunteered with Center for Women in Transition during its first decade, so we've been aware of your work all through its years. I'd appreciate all you do. My question has to do with the distribution of your budget. What, in just broad figures, how much goes to staff support, to other kinds of assistance, just to give us a sense of how it's divided up?
That is a really good question, too. So I don't want to give any incorrect information, so I want to start it by saying that we have a community report on our website that breaks down exactly the percentages of what it goes towards, and our 990 is available as well. But I would say, if I'm guessing off of the top of my head, this will not be exact, but you can get it on our website. I believe about 70% of our funding goes towards direct services support, and then probably about 20% to staffing cost, and then there's things like keeping the lights on and things like that as well. So a significant portion of our funding is going directly towards providing support for survivors. But I can also tell you, if you want to come up to me afterwards, I can tell you exactly where to find that information on our website too.
Thank you, Danielle. We always tell our presenters, yes, thank you. We always tell our presenters that if they'll leave a little bit of time for questions and answers, they'll be rewarded with thought-provoking questions, and you definitely have again provided that today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've learned a lot. It's much more expansive.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of
I
course.
appreciate that very much. Continuing with our community partners in January. Next week, Pastor Winfred Burns is scheduled to be here from Maple Avenue Ministries. That's one of our new community partners. And so they'll be informing us about the ministries at Maple Avenue. And then on January 25, our own Emily Christensen will tell us about Culture Works. So, we hope to see you back next week as well. Thank you.